tell you a secret? I don't really like gardening. I don't. I think it's the process, right? It's the picking and the planting and the pruning and the prepping and it's the waiting. Like you sit and you wait for these plants to grow. You wait and you wait and you wait. My wife loves it. My wife loves to garden. And in fact, she loves to talk about gardening. And she could talk for hours and hours about the process and the plants. And maybe I'm a little biased, but I could actually listen to her talk for hours about gardening as much as I don't like it. But what interests me so much about when she talks about are the different plants. She'll talk about the tomato plants and the cucumbers and the onions and the garlic, and she'll talk about the different roots that they have and the different leaves that they have and how they have to be planted at different times and they have to be taken care of in different ways and all this stuff. And it's amazing how all of these different plants that look so similar when they're planted can grow to be so different when they're bigger. In fact, it's not just inside of a garden, but outside we look at plants that are all over the world, and they're also different. So even these plants outside of the garden, when we look at them, right? Some of them have deep root systems because they're so tall. Some of them have wide root systems that are shallow because they have to collect moisture. Some of them have they have smaller leaves, right? Some of them have broad leaves to repel rain, right? God has designed all of these plants differently. And the thing is that whether it's a plant outside of a garden or it's a plant that has been put into a garden, they all have something in common. See, all of these plants grow where they're planted. Now, I know that probably sounds really simple, and I'm not much of a botanist, but yeah, follow me on this, right? Whether they are designed and they're outside of a garden, or they have been designated and they are inside of this garden, these plants grow where they're planted. Because either God has designed them to grow this certain way, or the gardener takes care of them, nurtures them, brings them to life inside of this garden, and they just grow exactly where they're planted. Maybe that's why I don't like gardening so much. Maybe that's why I don't care for gardening so much in that process. Because sometimes I feel like I don't want to grow where I'm planted. I don't want to be where God has put me. Whether it's in this situation, or in this environment, or even sometimes with the people that I'm around. I feel like I do not want to grow. I don't want to continue on where God has me, and so I dream about other places. I want to be here, I want to be there, I want to be doing something else. I have a feeling I'm not the only one. I have a feeling that there's some of you out there that you feel the same way. You don't want to be where God has put you. You don't want to be here because you want to be doing something else, or you want to be somewhere else, or you want to be with someone else. See, Paul, the Apostle Paul, talks to a group of people about this very thing, growing where they're planted. Of course, he doesn't use plant terms with them because they're humans, but he uses the word content. Content. It's a word that's hard for some of us to swallow. In fact, I think that's one of those words that many of us, we think we may have it, or we really, really want it. But sometimes, most of the time, we rarely ever get it. So he talks about being content in all these circumstances. See, the Philippian church has gifted Paul a beautiful gift to help him in his ministry. But he lets them know, as much as that gift is helpful, as much as he loves that gift, as much as it is useful for what he's doing, he wants them to understand that it's not just the gift that's the great thing. Because he has, even if they didn't send that gift, he is content. He knows what it's like to have gifts like that. He knows what it's like not to have gifts like that. But he has learned what it is to be content. In fact, the phrase he uses is he has learned the secret of being content. Learned the secret. It's a really rare word that Paul doesn't use anywhere else in his letters. In fact, you won't find it anywhere else in the New Testament. Learned the secret. It's this borrowed term. In fact, the philosophers would use this term when they're talking about entering into the mysteries. Entering into the mysteries of things. I think contentment is a mystery for some of us. At least it is for me sometimes. Right? I feel like I could read the definition and know it up and down and realize what contentment is. But to actually enter into contentment, to actually be content, that's pretty elusive for a lot of us. But another definition for this term, and I think that's how Paul is using it, is not just entering into the mystery of contentment, but it also describes how it is learned by experience. And that's how he describes it there in chapter 4 of Philippians. It's that it's learned by experience. He says, I've learned what it's like to have a lot. I know what it's like to have a little, but he knows the secret of being content, growing where he is planted. He knows that secret. Because that's the thing about contentment. That's the thing about learning by experience, right? We don't learn only when we have a lot of things. We learn contentment by having very little. It's not just the luxury in which we learn, it's also in the lack. It's not always having where we learn contentment. It's sometimes having not or not having. It's not just the with, but it's also the without. We learn more about joy sometimes. Not just by being happy all the time, but we know the depths of joy in the valleys of sadness, the valleys of disappointment. And so we learn what it is to be truly joyful, what it is truly to be happy, what it is truly to be content when we have experienced all of these different things. And that secret that Paul gives us in Philippians 4 isn't just going out and having a lot of things. In fact, it's not just seeking after the things that you do not have. See, because it's not in the circumstances that we find the secret. It's not in the having or even not having that we find this secret. He says to us, he says that we do not focus on having, we do not focus on being without, we focus on Christ. He says that in all these things, having and not having, he says in all these things, it is through Christ that he is strengthened. It is in Christ that he is strengthened. So he's not focusing on having, he's not focusing on not having, he's not focusing on the environment in which he's in, the place where he is planted. He's not focused on those things. He's focused on one thing, and that is Jesus. The strength that he gets from Jesus. See, our problem is that we're always looking for the next thing. We are always looking for the next thing. Because we think that the next thing is going to either get us out of here, or it's going to bring us that strength, it's going to bring us power, it's going to bring us wisdom, whatever it is. Like if we think we get this next skill, we're going to be better off. We think that if we get onto this next place, we're going to be better off. If we get out of school and into this school, we're going to be better off. We think that if we just simply get out of the school we're in, we're going to be better off. We think if we get this boyfriend or this girlfriend, or sometimes we think that even if we just spend another hour on the video games and we level up, that we're going to be content, we're going to be happy. It could be simple as that. But we are always chasing the next thing. We are always chasing the next thing, and we are never content where God has put us and where God has planted us. And so we do not grow because we are not finding our strength in this true source of strength and contentment. It is when we do not focus on the environment that's around us, because that environment will change. Sometimes we're planted here, sometimes we're planted there. But it is when we focus on the gardener, on Christ, that we will find our strength. How do we focus on him? We focus on Christ and we find our strength by being connected to his word regularly, by being rooted in prayer daily, and being cultivated in a community of people that want the same thing, that desire the same thing, that are seeking and focusing on Christ and focusing on that gardener all the time. It's when we are cultivated in that community, rooted in prayer and connected to his word, that we will find our strength and find our contentment in him, not in our circumstances. May we be a people that find strength and contentment in Christ and grow where we're planted.